Good morning, everyone. Are you ready to kick off this session? I'm still, seeing some people in, so let's give a minute. But I think we can start if you're okay. We were hesitating about if we're going to have audience, so thank you for being here. And I think we do have a pretty hot and relevant topic to address this morning. So thank you to my dear co-panelists this morning. So I always like to kick off the panel by asking themselves to introduce and to tell a little bit about your organizations, your role, and a personal thing about yourself. I always like so that people can start to get to know you before that we can open the conversation. So we can start with you, Liliana, please.
Thank you, Adriana, and thank you to my panelists, my colleagues and friends. I'm Liliana Reyes. I am the CEO of the Mexican Private Equity and Venture Capital Association. It's a non-profit organization that represents the whole private equity industry in Mexico. We are a 21-year-old organization, and our objective is to promote the industry in order to make it grow and always to facilitate our members, mainly GPs, to connect with potential investors. So fundraising is key for our objectives. And well, I can be working in the financial sector for more than 20 years. First as a public service and the public service in development banks. That's where I met Adriana. And I work before the association, working in the association, I work at the National Entrepreneurship Institute, which was a very important organization that promote the creation of new VC funds in Mexico. So with this initiative, we create more than 40 new VC funds. So thank you for being here. And I think I a natural connector. I love to make people collaborate, and that's why I'm so happy to lead this organization, because I think it's a perfect place to do it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Liliana. And
All
welcome.
Right. Good morning,
Osleen.
everyone. Yes, my name is Osleen Carrington, and I am the CEO of, in Guyana, the Economic Development Fund, and also the Impact Venture Fund. And what we do is we are a combination incubator, accelerator, and capital provider. We use blended finance in order to support ideas in ag tech, ag science, agro-processing, and straight technology. We collaborate with all sectors of the society, but we, until recently, were primarily working with the university to commercialize ideas. But now we work generally with any and everyone with fabulous ideas. And I'm a former banker, been in banking, finance, technology, grew up in Silicon Valley, so to speak. My first boss in Silicon Valley in financial firms said, there's this thing called the internet. You know, this was back in the mid 90s. And so I got stuck on that beat and sort of grew up in technology. Most recently have been in academia. I'm a lecturer at the university as well in finance. And so that's what I do, and we bring a lot of value, I believe. We're one of the few firms in Guyana that does what we do, and broadening that now to the wider Caribbean. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Osleen. And now to our gender balance member. So Jose, welcome to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Adriana. I'm Jose Garcia Hertz. I'm managing partner at Winnipeg Ventures and also the president of the VC Association of Peru. So wearing both hats now. So that's very interesting because I can share my own personal fundraising effort right now. It's raising actually a sector-specific fund for EdTech and future of work. And also in development of the ecosystem in general and in eco-building. And by the way, I feel very familiar in this setting. I have 3 daughters, my wife, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law. So I'm normally the only male in the room. So this is very, very familiar to me.
Now you feel, the same thing.
Exactly.
The same exact emotion that we normally going through, in the financial sector. Welcome, Jose. Thank you. Maria.
My name is Maria Rita. I'm from one of the most beloved countries in the world, Brazil. I'm so happy to be here because I love Latin America also, so thank you so much for having me here. I served as a board member of Anjos do Brasil. Anjos do Brasil is a non-profit organization to foster angel investment. So we are an angel network, the biggest one in Brazil. We have more than 500 investors in our network with more than 200 startups that we invested in. It's a lot for an angel network. But I'm also deeply connected with all the ecosystem in Brazil. And for me, one of the most important things is diversity and impact. I think the landscape is changing a lot. We are going to talk about that. And this is what we have to say. We have to change how we do things in our ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. And as you can see, I have a quite diverse, panelists. So to really address this hot topic, mastering fundraising. Oh my goodness, what a hot, question. And by the way, I'm Adriana Tortajada. I'm the CEO and managing partner of 1200 BC, which is a new investment platform that we are planning to allocate money into fund managers, emerging and established, and founders that are shaping the future of the humanity with technology in the entire continent of Americas. And let me start, I think, a good question for all of you, so we can kick off the conversation. And you just mentioned it, that, Maria. We need to adapt the changing landscape that we are facing nowadays. We represent different geographies. We have done a lot of stuff. You have a pretty interest trajectory and track record and different roles that you are playing, like a relevant actors in the ecosystem. So how have fundraising strategies evolved over the past decade? I think it's really relevant. We have done a lot in the public, private, educational sectors, like fund managers, but also like members of a huge community and organizations. So please, can you be so kind to share key trends that are shaping the future of venture capital, fund management, and angel investing from everyone's perspective? So we can start from this side with Maria, please.
Oh yeah, this is really interesting to say. I was not at the start, because no one is at the start, but I saw a lot changing in Brazil. 14 years ago, when we started Anjos do Brasil, we have almost nothing there. It's hard to say that, but it was the reality. There was just one angel network, 2 or 3 VCs working on that, and a few entrepreneurs. So we are trying to understand what's happening. And all the startups, we are having funding for almost nothing. They don't have a very good business model. They don't know how to grow, but we are trying to do that. So from the entrepreneur's perspective, it was not so hard to access venture capitalists or angel investors. It was not a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money to put that on Brazil, but it was a little easier. But with time, we had a lot of changes. We had multiple actors coming to Brazil and making things happen there. So today is much, much more harder. And we also have some very important points in Brazil. I don't know if all the countries have passed to that, but for example, 4 or 5 years ago, we were really happy in Brazil because we had a lot of money, a lot of new VCs coming, money from all over the world. Everybody loves Brazil, understand that we have a huge potential, and the entrepreneurs are getting a lot of money, lots of money with almost just an idea. And it was really bad for us because valuations come super high. Money is good, but a lot of money sometimes is not. Entrepreneurs don't know how to do that. And then we have the pandemic. The COVID came, everything changed. It was, of course, a terrible, terrible time. But after that, we understand how to do things better. First of all, we understand that we don't need to put so much money in the companies that we as investors, we have to look the financial from our side also. If I go to a company and have only 1% of this company, it will not pay me at the end of the day. So it's a lot of change. And nowadays, what I think that is coming for the future is that we are seeing the ESG point. So we have to look to environment, to social, and to governance much more. It's not for every stages in Brazil yet, but I'm pretty sure that this is what we have to look so good entrepreneurs can get very good funds.
Measure better the outcomes, right? Awesome. Thank you. Jose, your perspective.
Okay, 10 years. 10 years we had nothing.
Mainly.
It's really, I mean, if I put my hat as a Peruvian VC association, I'm going to put that hat on first, 10 years ago we had nothing, and then we had something that began about 6, 7 years ago. It really began, and there was a small but growing trend. Then COVID came with its positives and its negatives, because it did grow some sectors, and investments actually increased quite a bit, at least in Peru. And we got that kickstart, and then COVID, and the interest rates. And we had the problem with interest rates and families getting reticent, and I was talking with
global inflation. Yeah.
Exactly, and then also the mistakes by the angels, when you have a small network of angels and they do this initial rookie mistakes of investing a lot of money in one or two startups, and of course they lose the money, and then they began going against the asset class, and you begin getting those rumors. So we're going through that initial a lot of mistakes cycle, which is even though there are other markets that committed those cycles and you can read about it, you have to do them themselves. I think there's that is that part of the message. And then of course this last low liquidity, which is I think even harder. I mean, if it's hard for Brazil, you can imagine smaller markets. It's even
being the largest economy in the region.
It's even tougher. I think it's beginning to unlock, and I have some hope and positives. I think there's been efforts from some players. You're part of it. It's with Peruvian Development Bank that's really beginning to kickstart that effort again. Because it's more than a change. I think it's really a kickstart that we need to ignite again to grow that ecosystem.
Absolutely. New actors are emerging and taking a pretty relevant role to support, a big catalytic for the ecosystem.
What I see as a positive is growth of really corporate VCs. I think Crealo in fintech, for example, in Peru has really been a catalyzer. Mm-hmm. And I think if more of those players come in, I think the ecosystem in general can grow as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Osleen, from your perspective.
Sure. So I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of the entire Caribbean. So together, all of the countries of CARICOM, which are about 14, represent 16 million people, consumers. In addition to that, the Caribbean has a very high population of people immigrating to the US and Canada. So within the US, it's about 15 million people who are of Caribbean descent. So when we're talking about a potential investment community, taking out, of course, children and things like that, we're just talking pure numbers of over 30 million. And so what the trend is, I think, is, first of all, prior to current times, COVID notwithstanding and all of that, there really was not much investment by either the local people or the diaspora in this, in the region, in the sort of alternative asset class, right? Mm-hmm. There's a movement, or was a movement, by the largest exchange in the region, which is the Jamaica Stock Exchange, to get people to invest in retail investing, right? But when we talk about this alternative investments, that was sort of non-existent. What's happened more recently is two really important things. One is three things, actually. Investment by the US in the region in terms of sustainability and disaster resilience and things like that. And it's turned into actual physical investments, not just aid. They don't really do that anymore. And then the second thing, so there's opportunities to find dollars, find capital through, that type of work. Then we have the multilaterals that have also recognized that there's opportunities. So you have IDB, IFC, and so forth that are investing. And then you also, thirdly, have there are many American, European, Canadian corporations that operate in the region. And so there's corporate funding as well to invest in really great ideas, really great opportunities. So what those things together mean, in my first observation, is blended finance, is what's developed in the region. The second thing that nobody talks about really is the opportunity for investing coming from remittances. So in the Caribbean, I'll use Guyana as an example. We, in 2022, had $4 billion in remittances. $4 billion. So I'm wondering, where is this money getting absorbed, right? It's getting absorbed in consumer goods. It's getting absorbed in mortgage payments, in rental payments, in things like that. It also is getting absorbed in small businesses. So someone wants to start a small business, there were no investment companies for people to go to. They used remittances. But it's also getting absorbed by really smart entrepreneurs who are finding ways to channel those remittance dollars. So there is a company in Jamaica, that a tech firm, that's actually a friend of mine who started a firm that takes in remittances from the US, and those remittances are used to buy groceries. So it's a platform. So the money doesn't go directly by Western Union to Cousin Sally. Right. Instead, it goes to the platform, and the platform then arranges for food purchases and then delivers it a la, whatever, similar in the US, Uber Eats or what have you. So what's changing is the creativity around how money comes in, what it's used for, who is funding. And I'm actually, the last point I want to make in terms of what's changing around using diaspora dollars, one of my colleagues here, Blue Maho Capital, a Jamaican firm based in Florida, is actually going to be enabling the diaspora to invest using Reg CF, which is, for those who don't know, in the US, that's crowdfunding. So crowdfunding, remittances, blended finance is what's changed, and I think what we are doing is we're putting ourselves in a position to be able to leverage all of that.
It's an amazing point. Yeah, that's a totally different perspective, how we can channel different sources of capital, right? Amazing. Thank you. Liliana, on your perspective from Mexico.
Yes, talking about Mexico, well, I can say that 10 years ago, we were working together, Adriana and I, at the National Entrepreneurship Institute. We run a program to co-invest in new VC funds, first-time fund managers. So it was really very important to develop the ecosystem and the industry, because before that program in the country there were around 30 GPs working on the VC sector, according to the AMESCAP at that time.
According to your current organization.
Exactly.
And let me just make up, and it was private equity in a small transaction. It was not really a venture capital, but exactly. It was just three, yeah.
So, and now we at the association have identified more than 100 VC funds working on the country and doing fundraising for the third fund, for example. And many of them were supported for the first time by the government, by this National Entrepreneurship Institute. So I think it was quite easy for them to fundraise money, because the way to evaluate them is mainly because of the persons, the background, academic background and the professional background. It was a challenge to decide who will have this money as an investor, and this was really very helpful for them, because in that way they can compromise money for other investors. So it was amazing. 7 years later, or 6, the INADEM disappeared, which was really a big shot. But anyway, I mean, the funds are there. They are struggling fundraising, because now LPs has become more sophisticated, and they are asking to see returns and to see track record. So now it's challenging and more difficult for those VCs, but at the same time, they already have what to show, a story to tell. We already have in the country around 12 unicorns, which are not the only companies that is worth to invest on, I'm sure about it, but we have something to show. And from the side of the association, it's part of our job to promote the industry, to talk with those LPs, national and abroad, to promote the industry and to work with our members in order to develop some studies about track records. It's challenging because we don't have enough information sometimes, but it's something that we have to do. LPs need to know returns. That's the main mandate for them, especially for pension funds that are starting in Mexico to invest in VC. They used to do it in real estate, infrastructure, private credit, but now they are starting to do it in VC because they know already the asset class, and they are asking for more best practices and for those research about returns, and that's what we are doing from the association.
No, that's amazing, and it's really relevant because we need more sources of capital. Do you want to add something, Maria?
Yes, please.
So you taking the mic. Let's go.
Yeah, thank you so much. You were a good moderator. You see that I did that. No, I just want to talk about blended finance since you mentioned it. I don't know if everybody knows it. Blended finance is a form of capital that will, as the word say, blended, philanthropic or catalytic capital with the private money. And this is really important. It's really a tendency. I don't know why, a lot of people don't know about that, and most of the money is going to climate change, to infrastructure, to big projects. And I really want us that are in the VC industry to think how we can attract this money for us, to help to fund startups, because it's a wonderful way to do that. If you are an entrepreneur, you know that it's so hard to have some money at the beginning when you have nothing, and then get to the second stage, to the third stage, to go to an angel, and then to go to a VC. When you have some blended, you can use this kind of money in different stages to do that. And if you are a VC, please help us to show the multilaterals that we need this kind of money, that, for example, climate change is not enough if we don't look to climate justice, if we don't bring the perspective of women, of the minorities, of everybody else. But this is, for me, a very important, a very huge way that we can get more money from our environment, and people are not looking at that properly.
Actually, connecting with them, Maria, the next question is pretty related to you, Maria and Roslyn, because I want to touch the topic of technology and these fundraising diversity strategies, like the diversification strategies, let's put it that way. So you already mentioned some of that examples. You're starting to touch the topic. We need to hack the fundraising situation with different, capital sources, different LPs, and different tools. So what is your opinion about new technologies in the fundraising, strategy?
Right. So
landscape?
I think fundraising without the use of technology, and I'll be specific about what I mean by use of technology, is for us virtually impossible. We are in CARICOM fragmented. We are speakers of English, Dutch, French, Spanish, all the legacy of colonialism, and people still hold on to these things. So the barriers of country A versus country B, the physical barriers are very real, and people internalize that. So to try to say, okay, I'm going to go do work in Suriname, or I'm going to go do work in Trinidad, or I'll go do work in Curacao or whatever, it's not possible. You cannot just land in a place and say, I'm going to go hunt for deals. It's not like the United States where, coast to coast, it's the same, right? So we use technology in two very, very specific ways. In terms of our work with entrepreneurs, we do so as a digital-first platform, or digital-only platform, in fact. So we take you in, we work with you, and we interact with you in an online capacity. That doesn't mean you don't see us. It doesn't mean we don't see you. It doesn't mean we don't see where you are and so forth. But we do that. And what that allows us to do is to tell our story of our impact to more people. Because the second way we do it is that we connect with the multilaterals, with the government agencies, with the diaspora using technology. So we have an investment platform that enables people to work with us through the platform, right? And we'll be doing that as well with other platform providers. So whether it's a Reg CF, type of fundraising platform in the U.S., or it's a standard sort of, memorandum, not memorandum, the deal book that you can see online, and you indicate that you are a registered or accredited investor or a sophisticated investor or whatever. This is the way that we do it. And then, of course, with the multilaterals and with government, because we're also funded by the U.S. government, we're able to communicate with them and share impact and results through technology. So the technology is really integral. We work across different countries, and we can't do that. And within the country of Guyana, for example, which is huge geographically and small in population, we cannot get to everyone without the technology.
Absolutely.
So it's really an essential part of our service delivery and our ability to attract capital.
Absolutely, it's a tool that
Yeah.
in the 21st century, it's unbelievable. We don't have more, these kind of platforms to connect each other to
Right.
really give visibility what is happening, because it's so challenging to sell the region without information. Any additional comment regardless the use of technology in fundraising?
Yeah, I think that just add something a little bit different, because it's really a tool, and we don't have, we cannot forget that are people behind it.
That's the next question, Maria.
Yeah. So I will just wait for the next question. Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
I was trying to connect technology with the people that is behind,
No,
right? Yeah.
the
So
people
it's
is
perfect
behind.
timing.
For example, when you say about, for example, crowdfunding, it's a very good tool, but sometimes you put people that are doing this kind of investments and they think at themselves as angel investors. They are not. I'm so sorry to say that, but they are not angel investors when they invest by crowdfunding. They are good investors. It's a very nice way using technology, but they are not angel investors. They are not venture capitalists. They are not like that. So we have to understand that this is just a tool that will not change our environment in total, that we need also to understand what is the part that each people has to do on that.
Absolutely. And we are in a business that it's actually all about people, right? We are looking the outliers, and how do we build trust? Yesterday I was talking in another panel that we have all this legal framework inspired by the, North American framework, right? The investment trust is a fideicomiso, or the investment vehicles that we use in Spanish. And what it has been challenging in Latin America, particularly in the Caribbean, is to build trust among the actors, because you already talk about it. We are quite diverse. We have multi-languages, different cultures, backgrounds, speeds. And so from your perspective, like investment associations, Jose and Liliana, how do you recommend all the actors that are present today with us that we work to build that trust among the actors? Because fundraising is challenging, and sometimes I've heard, and I'm not gonna say from who, but I was asking a relevant LP at New York, like, how long it will take that he believes to build the trust among us, because we have seen like for 2 or 3 years in the same conference, and he say, I never invest in someone like after 10 years that I really met them. And I say, oh my goodness, let me take a picture and let me see how I'm gonna be after 10 years, so meeting you. So your comments regardless there.
Yes.
So that's gonna be
No,
challenging
and
for
exactly. One of my Mexican colleagues, actually very successful, has a fund. He told me, we were talking, he was introducing me to families, and at the end, he told me, you just have to get in front of them, and they have to trust you. It's like, that's very subjective. Because you have your thesis, and you have your numbers, and you have even your track record. You can bring everything to the table, And at the end, especially family offices, but because then you have institutional investors and others that really not a really developed industry in Latin America yet. It's way more developed in the US. Then you have to go to these families, and at the end, it is. And actually, there is some truth to that, because I had several no's a couple years ago that have turned into maybes, which is
After
huge progress.
2 or 3
but
years.
It's 2 years, but
Okay.
it's 2 years.
We're evolving.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So at the end, it's a lot of very resilient in industry. You have to have a lot of resilience, a lot of persistence. Yeah, in some pockets, because I mean this is not a cheap process either. So besides the human factor, there's also a financial factor that you have to be ready to invest in this. This is a long process where somebody has to back you up. In some countries, there's we had in Peru, we had sort of the ProInnova has given us some to like 3 emerging fund managers have given us a small grant to subsidize part of the fundraising process.
Setting up expensive.
Yes, for the setting up. It's not huge, but it helps, because every cent helps. But if not, it's either your personal money or your institutional money that has to back you up until you get to that trust. I mean, 10 years is way too much. But it does take you a couple of years before you build that trust, especially when, and that's a problem we've had in Peru lately also, like fund managers that have defrauded people. Like, totally different asset class. It's not VC. They've done like private credits and stuff like. And there's in the news they come the fund business, and you get pocketed into the fund business, even though you have done your study, you have done your homework, you have been diligent, and you have transparency. But if there are some foul actors that do either Ponzi schemes or stuff like that, that affects the industry as well, especially in smaller markets.
Yeah. Liliana.
Well, in our case, I think that the association plays a key role in putting together LPs and GPs. That's our work. And we organize a lot of conferences. I always think that why do we have to do it? Because it's so stressing to do it. But it's part of the personal contact. At the association, we already have a network of amigos de AMESCAP friends, that are those LPs that trust in the association. And in that way, we can send them information. They answer us the emails, which I think that for many GPs is very complicated. And that's the way we do it. We organize event in Mexico, of course, the most important conference regarding private equity, but we also organize event outside in the States, in New York mainly, because we know that many of the LPs have offices there. And that's the way we can help our members to connect with those LPs. Of course, it takes a lot of time. We have a special LP that we were inviting for years to all of our events, and he always goes to that, participate on the conference. And many of our members told us, but he's not investing. He's not investing in Mexico. He's not investing in BC. Why do you invite him? And last year, well, some months ago, that person came to Mexico and had many interviews with VC funds, and it was amazing. I was so happy because finally that person come to Mexico and see these VC funds and is already investing. So it's a long-term relationship, and I think the way also to build this trust is to be part of the association. I have to make my commercial, of course. But it's true. I mean, it's easier.
Is going to be any discount for the GEC community?
Yes,
Okay.
there is a discount if you're part of other association in Latam. You can come and have the discount. But it's true. I mean, it's easier for us to connect with those LPs, and it's easy for us to sell the story to LPs. For example, the pension fund in Mexico, we have a strong working plan in order to improve best practices, and we already have a lot of things working together, and they trust in the association. So I think it's key for building this relationship. And personal contact. We interviewed last week many of LPs, different of them, pension funds, family offices, and they told us, I mean, technology is helping a lot. to make faster the due diligence or some interview, but for us it's key to have this personal contact, to know the team of the VC and to know their offices, so to attend events. It's challenging for VCs because they need to select very well what kind of events they want to attend, because you don't have too much budget to participate in all of them, but I think you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is really relevant, how to be present, how to collaborate, to connect. We are a member of communities and really building the trust among the information that we gather and in the connections that we are building across this conference. And Maria, you just recently touched a pretty relevant topic that I want to follow up. How relevant is to really have these ESG metrics for fundraising purposes? Because at the end, I think the entire capital is switching into more, purpose or impact first driven decision-making process. And I think there is an intentionality right now that larger LP are looking through allocate money into alternative assets. So particularly for you, Maria and Arlene, what are your perspective regardless the ESG framework for fundraising purposes?
I think that today you can fund, you can have fund, you can have money without that. But you are not going to do that in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years. So you have to be prepared right now. It's changing, as you said. Family offices, they want purpose. We have a very difficult asset class. Let's be clear. It's not easy to make money on VC. It's not easy. And people that are putting money on that, they know that. They are not naive. They know that it's hard to do what we want to do. So they want to have that. If they are family office, they will need that. You have to tell them a very good story, why. And this story is not just for me talking. I have to have data all the time. The multilaterals, all of them, they are changed for that. I see in Brazil, our development bank, BNDES, they now just will invest in fund managers that are doing that. They are just helping angels that understand that they have to look to environmental and social and governance metrics. Governance, it's easier for us. We always do that, but social, we don't do that. Yeah. And we can start in a very simple way. We can start in a very easy way. So we are going to be ready when we really need very profound metrics.
Yeah, amazing.
So this is an interesting question for me because my background is in economic development, and so while I'm interested in profit, I'm interested in making money, I'm a banker. This is not work that I would do because it's so hard if there wasn't a social element to this. And so
Absolutely.
There's like sort of 3 things for me. The first is there's 7 billion people on this planet. And if you sort of boil it down to, for me, those who speak English, those who have the ability to buy, purchasing power, blah, 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 you're talking about, a few 100 million people that could be, really the target. The point I'm making is that these people have a set of problems, a specific set of problems. So I'm interested in businesses to invest in those that are solving those problems. Why? Because they have scale and because they're going to make a difference. I don't personally see the need for an automatic garage opener that does so by my iris. Okay? I'm not criticizing that kind of stuff, but I don't see the need for it. I see the need for meeting essential social needs of 300 to 500 million people on the planet, and there's money in that. So why is this relevant? It's because the people who give us money, the multilaterals, the governments, the pension funds in some cases, but certainly philanthropy and so forth, the blended finance, they're only giving the money because you're making a social impact. It's part of the reporting and the metrics. I have to be able to say X number of jobs were created, Y amount of women are in business, B amount of economic, sort of impact was created. If I can't present that, I don't get the money.
Yeah.
Right? So it's essential for our mission as like I want to solve the problems of the 500 million people, but it's also essential for our fundraising. I don't get the money if I can't deliver impact.
Absolutely. And that is tied to relevant sectors, right?
Yeah.
So that a particular, there are a huge bunch of problems that we need still pending to solve. So that's why we're so passionate about the technology that can, with tech enables, tech-based or deep tech solutions to the market. So on your perspective, and let me continue with this same topic, Liliana and Jose, what are these particular sectors? What are your insights that are the trends that the investors are looking for in our region?
Well, in the case of Mexico, we see that the nearshoring effect is growing and making the logistics sector very attractive for investors. We also are seeing that fintech is still one of the most invested verticals at the BC sector. E-commerce, mobility, healthcare. So I think that's the most relevant ones. And many of them are solving those social problems. And with this focus of ESG is crucial for us also. And from the association, we are always trying to help our GPs to be prepared for that. I mean, it's challenging because not all the projects has this techniques to measure the impact, which is quite complicated, but it's something that is in our agenda.
No, absolutely. We need to measure that. What about trends and sectors?
In addition to what Liliana has said, there's a huge trend in climate tech. Of course, I mean, environment has become a really favorite. There's some foundations and families that have gone deeply into that, and I mean, even the IDB lab in the last batch actually approved 2 sectors specific to climate tech. So that's a huge sector as well. I mean, relating to nearshoring, one of the bottlenecks is actually education as well. So it's not only logistics. You don't need only physical infrastructure. You need also skills, and new competencies and skills for nearshoring. I think our growth in terms of the EdTech and future of work, where we as Winnipeg are concentrated, for example, we see huge opportunities in a couple of themes. One is nearshoring. The other one is basically the connection with the U.S. community, with the Latino U.S. community in terms of education, and that ties up very well with work. At the end, is workforce. It's lifelong learning and workforce development, which is a huge segment that was never educated or was very limitedly educated. So there's a huge new market that technology right now, especially mobile technology and new applications and AI, in terms of generation of content, is where we're seeing new opportunities, and I think that's from a year ago. When I began my thesis, that wasn't included, but now we see a huge market also developing there.
And that is really impressed. And as you were mentioning, the size of the opportunity to solve these problems with this kind of technology in those verticals is not only for an underserved region like Latin America and the Caribbean, but also is all the migrants inside United States, all the minorities, all the different profiles, don't worry about my pen, that are the same size of the economy of the region as well, inside United States. So you mentioned it, Arlene, right? So I want to continue this conversation. We talk about people, opportunities, technologies, challenges, trust, and also we have another relevant topic, which is regulatory framework. Regulatory framework, it's challenging in every one of our different economies. That's what we tend to do, or our investment firms based in US, right? Because it's the most open framework, legal framework to really do business. But in your perspective, Arlene and Maria, that you represent, different profiles, what is your opinion about the evolution of the regulatory framework landscape in our region?
I have very strong feelings about government in our region in particular. And I'm going to say stuff that may be somewhat unpopular or, whatever. It's okay. So government has a very heavy hand in our region. And I'm going to say specifically the Caribbean. And the reason for that is because we're small societies of, in many cases, less than 1 million people, except in the case of Jamaica and Haiti and Dominican Republic and so forth. And so each country is dealing with government that's very present in this, from the standpoint of like, they're your neighbors, right? You see them at the grocery store, your kids go to school with them and so forth. And so they have a potentially outsized impact on what you do. And so for me, because I wear a couple of hats, I live in the US, but I also work in Guyana, I live in Guyana as well. My solution has been, without this being illegal, to basically circumvent government, right? I feel like there are a lot of things you can say about the US, but that are good, and a lot that you can say is not so good, but the strongest good for me as it relates to what we're discussing is the ability to create solutions without the heavy hand of government. Now, I'm no libertarian, right? But I believe that the more we have government involved, the more difficult it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we can find solutions that allow us to use the law, right? And we have to be, adhering to the rule of law, but find ways to leverage the law and be creative. And that's what we in particular have done, and what I encourage my colleagues in the rest of the Caribbean to do, is do what you have to do, but let's find other ways to have impact that sort of puts the government at the back of the line, if you will, and allows us to be more free market, more collaborative, more creative.
And that's a great point, because I used to work in the government
Same.
for many years, and I
That's
survived.
why I say what I say, because
Yeah,
I work for the state of New York.
absolutely. I
City
love
of
the
New
way
York.
that you address the top, I'm going to turn it over to you, Maria. But I just want to add that we need more entrepreneurs inside the public organizations. We really need people that understand who is in front of you in the table. And I've shared this with Liliana, and we did a lot of great things together because we were not politics, right? We were not politicians. We were just professionals trying to do our job, trying to solve problems for the community that we serve. And actually, we were investors because we were managing the taxes, right? For produce more benefits and goods for the society. So I think we really need to hack that model and convince the policymakers and the governments and regulators to just help us to put the platforms and facilitate the things instead to over-regulate the things. What's your opinion, Maria, on that
I
regard?
really think that we have to change the laws and we have to change regulations.
That was more
It's really
drastic.
hard.
Not only entrepreneurs change
it's
the
really
framework.
hard, but we have to work with them. As you said, there are very good people in the government. I'm not talking about politicians. Sometimes it's really complicated, but when you look to people that are working in the government, there are people that are brilliant, that know more about VC than I do, than you do, than everybody. And we have to have, it's the reality. I didn't know that back then, 14 years ago, but now I know that. And we have to work with them as allies. But it is really hard. We did a lot in Brazil. We have some laws that we approved that are good, but they are not enough. They didn't go the way that we want. We don't have tax incentives for investors, for example. Our labor laws are so complicated. But why I think that we have to understand who can be an ally. Let's see, for example, for regulations. We have a very good central bank, it's independent, and a very good Securities Commission in Brazil. And what they did for the fintech sectors, you all know that fintechs in Brazil are growing a lot. We have a lot of wonderful people.
The largest digital bank in the world.
For example, Nubank right now, that it works a lot and it's doing a very wonderful job. And why is that? It's not only from entrepreneurs, but also they changed some regulations and they allowed entrepreneurs to start trying to do things. So they did some new regulations, they do some sandbox initiatives, and they are still doing that. We have PIX, for example. It's a very simple way to make payments, and this came from them, from the government. So I don't think that we have to ignore all of that, but we have to work with them. Saying that it's really hard. For example, we have a framework for startups that I really don't like. I think that it was good for some points, but it wasn't enough for us to go forward. But I think that government is really important, and we have to support the policymakers, and we as a community has to work a little harder. So we can say, we create jobs, we make our countries to be much better for a lot of people, so we need this kind of new laws, of labor laws, of all of that.
Absolutely. Liliana, you want to add something?
Yes, I think it's key to have the government on your side, to make them allies. I mean, Adriana mentioned the experience we had. We really changed the ecosystem when we were together in creating this program, and it was so challenging. I mean, we had monthly meetings to explain why do we invest in these new fund managers, and we were saying, I mean, we are not giving grants, we are investing, and many of them have already returned the money and created new jobs, etc. So we need to tell the story again.
Yeah.
To take those success stories and continue, because we have talked with many investors, especially international ones, and they are telling us, of course, we would like to invest in good projects and in good VC funds, but we need the support also of the government. I mean, we need these anchor investors that give us the trust we need in your country. So it's good to have them in your events and to teach them about this industry, because sometimes they don't know it, and the impact is huge. They need to know, because it's important for economic development, it's important for many of the objectives they have. So in the association, one of the strategic pillars is the relation with authorities. We need to have this dialogue. We need to make this information, to let them know how important it is in the creation of jobs and the economic and social development. So it's key for us.
It's a pretty particular, interesting, and relevant metric that we use in venture capital, which is the X effect, right? How many times do we do our money for our LPs, for our, of course, founders? And for the government, I think it's really relevant to rethink the way they measure their success, instead of only, bigger numbers and what the politicians need to, earn votes. We can talk about the impact and the times that they duplicate and their money, our money, like as citizens, right? Because it's our taxes. So when we convince the government to really change that and think like a catalytic actor, that is starting to really be tied to innovation, public policy, and the rest of the actors understood how relevant were their mix of grants, soft loans, equity, different strategies. And for every dollar that we allocate into venture capital, we, earn $50 from the private sector. So, and that money was allocated into pretty successful, pretty international entrepreneurs and fund managers. That I think is pretty interesting, that we born international and regional. So Jose, in your perspective, Peru is doing something pretty similar, inspiring what happened in Mexico.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say Peru is doing something. It's small, it's growing. I think it's been very positive impact in terms of the fund of funds, and then ProInnova, they're giving grants to because I think it's a combined. You have to have the whole chain. You have to
offer and demand.
For the entrepreneurs, for incubators, accelerators, fund managers, angel networks. I think the whole ecosystem has to be built. It's not just one actor that needs to come, because we need all actors involved in the ecosystem. And that's being positive. But I want to just give a short hint on a small market, but that has an outsized investment in VC, which is Chile. I mean, and you could criticize Corfo and the structure and the leverage, which is, by the way, based on an SBA program that was developed back in the 60s in the US, which is leverages the funds, but they also give grants, and they invest in startups, they invest a lot in accelerators, and they've been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. If you see the amount of VC investment in Chile, it's really outsized because it's a really small country. So and they have given trust, of course, because if you leverage a fund, the return for the LPs from the family office that come in are larger because they're leveraging their investment, and it's giving them the opportunity to have better funds, but also they know the asset class now. Because one of the things is when you go to Chilean family offices, for a small country, they understand the asset class. Whereas in other markets, you have to explain the asset class. So that I think that's another example. I mean, you can improve that, but the amount of the investment that Corfo has put into that ecosystem is huge.
To develop the industry, absolutely. Now we have a couple of minutes to open the mic for the audience. Is anyone interested in to address one particular question to my panelists? Yeah, down to the room. You can use you need to use the Mac because we are streaming.
Yeah, we're streaming.
I made you yesterday. Nice to see you again.
Hola, Adriana.
Hola.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alma Diaz. I work for the Puerto Rico Community Foundation. I'm currently managing disaster recovery programs. So my question is, how those of us that manage disaster recovery programs can attract donors that invest in those programs that will transition into economic development projects?
Thank you. Who wants to take that one?
I think I can take this one.
Sure.
So I'm going to say that while first of all, disaster recovery is very timely. There's quite a lot of investment around in this region in general, in particular in the Caribbean, which of course Puerto Rico is part of the Caribbean, around resilience it's called. That's the general term that it's referred to. I would say that to attract investors in resilience, there has to be a very practical use of funds. So I was on a call recently with some Caribbean, it's an organization of Caribbean alternative asset players. And someone asked the same question. They were raising a fund. I think they've successfully raised the fund. And they were talking about, well, we're not seeing the kind of deals, we're not seeing the kind of opportunities to invest in this fund. And somebody else was on the call, a very experienced person, said, I'm sorry, but we're talking about very practical things like alternative energy. We're talking about, solar. We're talking about sort of ways that you can be prepared without it being about preparedness, right? So there are very specific either technologies or that different businesses are leveraging, or opportunities that you can invest in something tangible that for an investor has a very clear return. There is a company in New York called Block Power. It just so happens the firm is run by somebody I know who's a Guyanese. And they've attracted a tremendous amount of federal funds and state funds, because what they're doing is converting the buildings in New York City, which if you've been to New York City, they're old as hell. They're converting most of the buildings. They're converting the heating and air conditioning units, the systems, into more energy efficient units. This is a way of doing resilience, right? So it's not about disaster preparedness as much for investors as much as it is resilience and being able to reduce costs like energy costs and so forth, which we know if you live in Puerto Rico is a very big problem. So I think investors really care about what the thing is that you're doing and not the concept. So if you can find a way to turn the concept into some very tangible, investable things, then it's going to be more successful.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we are out of time. So yeah, I went really quickly, right? So I have to address one particular question from the GEC+ Organization Committee. So I will ask to conclude the discussion with one actionable recommendation related to the GEC+ team, which is Vision 2035, an entrepreneurial future for the Americas. So we can start with you, Lily.
Well, my unique recommendation.
Yes, because we are
Make
10 seconds.
Make
Nine,
a good
eight,
research
seven,
about the LPs you wanted to reach, and understand what they are looking for.
Thank you.
I would say look at other sources of capital. besides the traditional family office and institutional investors. If they are institutional, think about blended finance, philanthropy, diaspora, etc.
Yeah, no, just adding on Liliana, yeah, know your LP very well and their motivations, and have your story very straight. You have to have really, because you need trust. To build trust, you need to have a very good, not only proposal, but a good personal story as well from your GP side.
I would say pay lunch for people that are really interesting, make relationships, invite them, talk to them, so you can know and make, this is all about people.
100%. Thank you very much, my dear panelists. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Thank you.